do does not exist. My name is Michelle, and I'm doing this testimony from the United Kingdom. This testimony is actually on behalf of my mother. She was meant to sit this testimony, but she got quite emotional, so I'm sitting in for her. From 2020, my brother went for an eye test, and they found out that he had a swelling at the back of his eyes and that he would need emergency surgery, which was then carried out. They said that what caused the swelling was a case called hydrocephalus, and after they had done the surgery for him, everything was fine after then, and he was acting as normal. We didn't think anything of it. So coming now 2023 December, he started complaining again. So we took him to the A&E twice, and they said that they couldn't find anything and they didn't really know what was wrong. So then we decided to take him back to the hospital where he first had his surgery back in 2020, which they believe that the shunt in which they put in his brain to help the flow of the fluid was blocked, and they decided to reverse it. And once they had done this, we stayed in the they stayed in the hospital overnight and then came back home. That very day, the next day, Papa declared that on the 17th of January, no mother will lose their first son.
I don't know what is going on with your first son, but hear me as I hear the Lord. He will not die. He will not die. I don't know what is going on with his health. I don't know what is going on with his health, but hear me as I hear the Lord. He will not die.
And my mother said amen. The following day, she got a bit worried as he had not messaged her, he had not called her back. So she had called me to call one of his friends to speak to him and just for him to go and visit him at the hostel just to make sure that he was okay. As I spoke to one of his friend actually let me know that my brother had not come for the exam that he had gone back to university for, so that he was going to make his way to the hostel to check up on him and make sure that he was okay. On arrival to the hostel, he found out that my brother's room door had been opened, but he was not in the room. As he was about to leave, one of his flatmates came to him and told him that unfortunately my brother had collapsed in the kitchen and he found him, and that they had to rush him down to the hospital, which I then informed my mother, and she made her way down to the hospital. On her arrival to the hospital, they told her that they would have to take him back into surgery but transfer him to the hospital in which he had done the first surgery that he had back in 2020, since his ventricles had enlarged. So they took him back because the fluid had begun to build up in the brain again. And when they got there, they took him for another surgery, and this time decided to take off everything. So the shunt, they wanted to take everything off just in case they were missing something out. They then ended up putting an outer drain, where they can manually drain the fluid out. And during that January, Papa mentioned on the 9th and on the 23rd that God is reversing hydrocephalus.
Hydrocephalus, the Lord is reversing it. The Lord is reversing it.
And my mother said amen. One night, my brother must have been coughing, and as he was coughing, he stopped talking and his breathing became abnormal. So the nurses called the doctors, and the doctors called other doctors, and then things ended up coming out of control. And in less than 2 minutes, a flood of doctors came rushing into the room trying to save my brother, and they managed to stabilize him. And she was told that they were going to take him for an MRI scan, and from there to the ICU. As he was going there, they told her that he had a blood clot in his chest and that she has to prepare for the worst, that not many people make it. But she looked at the doctors and said that my son is exempted, for what God cannot do does not exist. He looked at her and said, I just have to let you know. And she said, my son is going nowhere. They also noticed that the tube was blocked again. So they took him back to the theater for another surgery. Another one after another, and it got blocked again. They kept taking him in and out of the theater. During the week of above my expectation, Papa said, God is doing that surgery by himself.
This might not be for everyone, but the person is for. Hear the word of the Lord. The Lord has done the surgery. The Lord has done the surgery.
And she said amen. That night she slept off and she had a dream. And in the dream, they had brought my brother to her, and they had cut the middle of his head where they had done the surgery. And the doctor in which brought him back to her had said to her that we are bringing your son back, and they gave her a bowl of worms in what they've collected, worms of different sizes and different colors, and they said to her that these are the things that we have taken out of your son's brain. And he ended up looking like someone, his face was swollen, looking like someone who had actually gone through surgery. She then woke up from the dream, and at this point, my brother had already been in and out of theater 5 times. They then tried to take him in for the 6th surgery to take out the tube, as there was no more blockage in the brain. So while all this was going on, doctors will come to her with several negative reports in which they weren't even 100% sure themselves. They were just assuming. So when my brother was finally out of the ICU, they brought him to the main ward, and they had a meeting with my mom. They said that there is a possible chance that it might take 1 year for my brother to recover, and even if he does, he may have a disability. They said the reason they even called for the meeting in the first place is to let me know that they were going to take out the NG tube from his nose and put a feeding tube in his stomach, and it might be for a long term or short term due to the fact that they were going to take him into the rehabilitation center. She looked at them and said to them that it will not happen. God has given him a mouth, and he will not create another one for him. And besides, her son is not going for rehabilitation. He walked into this hospital with his legs, and he will use these same legs to walk out. They looked at her and said, "We admire your faith, but this thing will happen." She said, "Let's see what God can do, because what God cannot do does not exist." Papa, the following day you said, "You have boasted with the name of God. You will not bow your head in shame."
I say, you have boasted with a rock. You will not bow your head down in shame.
And she shouted, "Amen." They had waited for her to go and had waited for her to sign the papers so they can go ahead with the procedure, but she refused. And the doctor said that since she will not sign the papers, that and she doesn't want it to take place, that they would do it themselves. So they took him in and they tried every means possible to put the feeding tube inside of him, but every single time they tried, it failed. So they then brought him back, and from then she knew that God was at work. They brought him back to her, and they said that they would look for another way to getting the tube inside of him, and they were going to speak to specialists to see how they were going to do this. And then on the 31st of May, Papa, you said, "I don't know why they want to prepare you for the 7th surgery. You have been through so much pain. It will be reversed."
I don't know why they are preparing you for a 7th surgery. The 7th surgery. You have been through so much pain. You have been through so much pain. If you are the one, put it on the live stream. And let there be reversed.
When the surgeon came in, he went through my brother's file, and he said that my brother had gone through so much, and that they were going to cancel the surgery as a whole. Moving on, due to the tubes that was in his mouth, his tongue was consistently out, and she had believed that the tube had affected his tongue, and he was unable to bring his tongue out or even control food that was put into his mouth. On the 13th of June, Papa, you said, "Paralysis of the tongue be reversed."
Paralysis of the tongue, let it be reversed.
And she claimed it. After that declaration, my brother was able to stick out his tongue. He tried him with yogurt, and he took it. And mind you, they said that even if he does start eating, he won't be able to take enough that will sustain him. I told them, once my son starts to eat, you will beg him to stop. And this is what happened. He added 8 kg in a week, which the dietitian said was not possible. She came back several days later to weigh him, and the second time my brother had weighed 11 kg, and after that they took the ND tube out of his nose. It was only his eyes that were moving. Every other part of his body was dormant. And on June 12th, Papa said, "You are watching me from the hospital. It has been months on end, in and out of the hospital and the ICU. Today, let it come to an end." And after that, my brother began to speak. Even though they said due to the damage in his brain, it would take a long time for him to speak. I told them who the great physician is, and they said, I don't understand what they are saying. But everything they said my brother can't do, he started doing. At the end of the day, my brother walked out of the hospital with his 2 legs better than ever before. The doctors looked at my brother and said, "This is a miracle." After 7 months of being in the hospital, God did what no man can do. I, on behalf of my mother, have come to testify and say thank you so much, Pastor Jerry. You are truly a blessing to this generation. We do not know where we will be without you. We say thank you for answering the call of God. Thank you for truly what God cannot do.